so I wanted to do one final factoring example that includes a couple different forms of factoring, because sometimes when you factor, you have to mix up a couple different methods. So the first thing you should always do when you factor is look and see if there's a GCF, something you could take out of every single term. And this one, that's not the case, so we'll move on. You may want to check and see if there's a polynomial identity you could use, also not the case here. So since there are 4 terms, I'm going to jump into using grouping method. I'm going to group the first 2 and group the last 2 together, and then factor out a GCF from the first group, which would be x to the 4th, and that's going to leave 2x plus 1.
That's 118 is on campus, that's 118 is on campus.
Next, I'm going to factor a GCF from the second group, which I'll need that to be a -1, so that once I divide them both by a -1, I get 2x plus 1, and this group matches this group. Okay, so remember, this thing that repeats is one of your factors. We kind of bring that out to the front. And the other factor comes from combining the 2 GCFs, x to the 4th minus 1. You may notice, though, that we're actually not done. This one keeps going, and it's the difference of maybe 2 perfect cubes, but in this case, it's 2 perfect squares, things that I could square root evenly. So I'm going to use the difference of squares and split this into 2 factors. This one is not the difference or sum of squares, so we're just going to leave it as it is. All right, so what's the square root of x to the 4th? That would be x squared. And what's the square root of 1? That would be 1. And then make 1 plus and make 1 minus. And we're actually still not done. This is now the sum of 2 squares, and you could factor it with complex roots, but I'm just going to leave it as it is, because unless it tells me to use complex roots, you don't really want to do that. But this one is the difference of 2 squares again, so it can still break up into 2 factors. The square root of x squared is x. The square root of 1 is 1. We'll make 1 plus, we'll make 1 minus, and so now I've got 4 factors. Two x plus 1, x squared plus 1, x plus 1, and x minus 1. Those are all factors of this expression. And I'm done because I can't factor anymore. This is no longer the difference of 2 squares because I can't square root the x anymore. So that one had 4 factors. This is another one like that, and I'm not going to go through it, but it actually has a GCF first, and then it can keep going a little bit. So if you want to try that one on your own, that's a good one to practice having to continuously factor a couple times.